when we left, the first every 50 miles, there was a roadblock of soldiers. And when we got to the first roadblock, really sadly, there was a car in front of us with a child who had a disability. And the phrase he used was, what use is he where he is going?
Welcome to the Brown Girl Rising podcast, where authenticity meets empowerment. I'm Urvashi, your host and your guide on this journey of elevating voices, sharing stories, and navigating the journey of resilience. So let's dive in. Oh my God, today, girls, I am so excited to have the author Bharti Dhir on the Brown Girl Rising podcast. I met Bharti less than 2 weeks ago at an exhibition in East London, where she was sitting with this book that caught my attention. And I went over and I had a chat. Bought the book. In fact, we bought 4 copies that day, didn't we?
Yes, you did.
And bought the book. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to read this book with my friends in a book club. I could not put it down. I have not read a book that's kept me so engrossed as Worth has in the last 3 or 4 years. So firstly, I want to thank you for writing this incredible book. Your story, your memoir, it is just fascinating, mind-blowing, and it just takes you on a journey through your life. And you were abandoned as a child. Your mum had a vision that brought her to the hospital, which honestly, I'm blown away by it in itself. Accepted as an African Asian descent woman into a Punjabi Sikh family and their extended family. Your skin condition, Bharti, and all the effort you and your father went through, honestly. And then, you know what? To top it off, the Idi Amin rule. I just cannot believe how much you have been through in your short life. I'm honored to have you here. So, Bharti, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Urvashi. I'm equally honored to be here on your podcast. I'm so honored that you asked me, and I'm so pleased you've read my memoir.
Yeah, I read it from cover to cover, like literally could not put it down. And you know what? I had to have you on the podcast. Like, your book inspired me, and I know it's going to inspire everybody who reads it. So, Bharti, the first question I ask all my guests, and I want to ask you, is what does it mean to you to be unlimited?
I was thinking about that question, and I thought, unlimited for me, I think you relate it to the title of my book, which is Worth. So unlimited to me would be that when we are born as children who have that sense of worth, have that sense of confidence in ourselves, and who have that sense of knowing that everything we ask for is going to be met. And so we have that unlimited sense of worth. We have that unlimited sense of being, nurtured if we're in the right environment, and being loved. And so when you ask me that question, what does unlimited mean to me? For me, it means that why is it that we are born with this unlimited sense of self and this unlimited sense of we are worthy, we have a purpose, we are looked after, and yet circumstances come in our lives to take away that sense of unlimited. So for me, it goes in a much more deeper level than just materials or possessions or relationships. It's all about the circumstances and experiences that we're exposed to that take away that unlimited sense of worth we were born with. Does that make sense to you?
It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So I want you to just give a quick synopsis of your book, if that's okay. And then I want you to can you tell me when, actually, let's go with that question. Can you tell me when you lost your unlimited sense of worth?
I think the first time probably that the first time I actually lost it was when I first found out that I was adopted.
You went through your dad's folder, didn't you?
Because in the 60s, parents were not encouraged generally to tell their children that they were adopted. And my parents were typical Indians. They didn't want me to feel that I was unloved. They didn't want me to start questioning my identity within the family. So they brought me very much up as, you are our child. And I had no reason to disbelieve them. And I had no reason to question my very existence. And when the kids at school used to say, that's not your real family, I didn't believe them. In fact, I think I've written, I got into a lot of fights. So when you go into a study and you find a folder and it's got your name written on it, and then you read the word adoption, and then you look it up in a dictionary, I think that's the first time I started not necessarily feeling I wasn't part of the family, but actually questioning why my parents had lied to me and who was I.
So you felt lied to.
And why was I abandoned on the roadside? What was it about me that my mother or her family didn't like about me, to the extent that they were prepared to leave me to die on the side of the road? And that, I think, that was probably the pivotal moment when I started to feel unlimited in myself. Because suddenly I started to question myself. I started to question my looks. I started to question my parents. What else had they lied about, to me? I started to question, was I really worthy to be here on earth? Should I really have died on that roadside? So, yeah. And then, of course, I think a few months later, obviously, I developed the skin condition. And I think that started to chip away at my sense of unlimited worth even more, because I'm hearing messages from various religious bodies saying this is karma for something bad she's done in her life, and she's being tested, or this is God's way of punishing her for something she's done, or she has to go through this test, or she hasn't got. So you can imagine, as you proceed through life with a condition like that, and then people actually openly start shunning you, again, your sense of unlimited worth, that worth wasn't unlimited anymore. It was actually, it started to diminish. That mountain started to diminish.
Yeah. It's interesting because in your book, obviously, you just said, am I worthy? You had this feeling of, am I worthy of being here on earth? But your story takes us on this journey where you were dropped off at a roadside in a fruit box. Yes. And then your mother had this vision, which I'm going to ask you to go into in a minute. She came to the hospital, she got you, and then all of a sudden you were this, your dad won some money, was it?
Yes.
And, all of a sudden you were the lucky child. So between the ages of 1 and 7, you were like this prosperous, lucky child, right? So you must have felt, well, I don't know, but did you feel completely worthy at that point? Or did it get to a point where actually it just got too much for you?
So let's start with my mum's dream. My mum talked to me about her dream. That was around about the age of 15, 16 when I disclosed to my mum finally. By this time, my father had died. So he died not knowing that I knew I was adopted.
Oh.
So, and it's only when I got another condition, unfortunately, called lupus, that when the consultant asked my mum, is there anybody in the family who has this condition? And my mum said to the consultant, oh, well, tell Bharti to go out the room and I'll tell you. And at that point, I turned around and said, Mum, I know I'm adopted. And I turned around and said to the consultant, I was found abandoned, so there's nothing known about my history. And so, and I'm adopted. So that was it. So subsequently, I was able to then ask my mum when we got home, well, tell me my story. What do you know about me? And she said, well, prior to my birth, my mum had lost 8 or so children in childbirth or miscarriage.
Oh, wow.
And she then had my older brother. And then she was pregnant, carrying my sister Anju.
Yeah.
And she kept dreaming that there was a girl coming into the family. And she kept telling my dad, I just sense it's not this child that I'm carrying. I know I'm carrying a girl, but I feel there's another little girl coming. And then she said to my dad, because in Uganda, there was a real intermingling of religious faiths.
Okay.
So Sikhs, we went to the Hindu temple. I've said, we were comfortable going to the mosque. We were comfortable going to church. Everybody intermingled with each other. It was only a small community. So we all celebrated each other's festivals. So my mum kept saying to my dad, I'm seeing Goddess Lakshmi, and she keeps coming to me, and she keeps saying to me, there's another little girl coming. And my dad was not as spiritual or as religious as my mum, and he kept saying, it's just your BAM. You know what BAM means? Like, it's just your sense. It's superstition. It's all mixed up. You've got a child you're carrying. That's the girl.
Mm.
And then the story is that when I was found abandoned, my dad was reading the local newspaper, and there was a picture of me, and my mum said, that's the girl. That's the girl I've been seeing.
Can I just stop you there? Because I think I remember that in the story, you say that the vision or the dream that your mum had, Lakshmi Ma says to your mum that she's a girl, she's in a pink,
Yes.
like a pink blanket, and she's in this particular ward in this particular hospital.
So it's etched on my mind, Ward 21 of Kabul.
And that's what Lakshmi Ma said to your mum.
Yes.
And that's what came out in the papers.
Yes.
Oh my God, my mind is blown.
Well, my mum didn't know that it hadn't come out that I was just told that they found me and I was in this hospital. And my mum said to my dad, she's in this hospital. She's in Ward 21. Take me there. And my dad took her. And as he was explaining to the receptionist what they were there for, my mum was gone. She already knew which she'd seen it so often in her dreams leading up to my birth. She said, I just knew exactly where to go. She goes, I went straight to the ward, saw the first cot, saw you there, wrapped up in a pink blanket, and I knew. And I turned around, picked you up. I said to your dad, this is our daughter. This is the one I've been seeing. And she said she wanted to take me there and then, but they had to follow the protocol of adoption. So, one of the things I've talked about also, Urvashi, is that initially when the news came out, in the newspaper, it said I was an Asian girl.
Mm.
A lot of Indian families then started coming forward because, obviously my mum said, oh, Goddess Lakshmi, Mataji Lakshmi told me this. And then, of course, they subsequently found out, actually, she's not actually Asian. She's part African, part Asian.
Mm.
It away. And didn't want to adopt an African child, a mixed dual heritage child. But my parents persevered and said, whatever she is, we're going to have her, And then, of course, my mum said that a month or so later, my dad won the football pools. And suddenly this whole family, a few of these families came back because obviously they thought I was a lucky child. They were like, she's brought luck on that family. They'd won millions.
Yeah.
We want, and so of course everybody started clamoring then to have me. But I think the legacy of it is quite bittersweet because as I grew up, people would come up to me, and if they were pregnant, they would make me touch their bellies and tell them ask me, a very young child who had no idea about luck and what I was being considered as. And they would ask me questions like, am I going to have a boy? It was always a boy. You know what it's like. It's always a boy. Am I going to have a boy? And I'd say, I don't know. And my mum would, and their faces would fall. And I mean, some women would literally look like they were going to burst into tears. And my mum would say, just say anything, just say anything. So I'd say, yeah, it's going to be a boy. Because I realized I better say it's a boy. Better not say it's a girl. So, yeah. And as I got older, it just got a bit silly. You know, I started to feel very pressured, because imagine somebody saying to you, you know, imagine thinking they think they're going to have a boy. What if it's a girl? Am I going to be held responsible for the fact that they've got a girl?
Yeah.
You know? And then
it's ironic, isn't it? Like they're coming to you, a girl sent from Lakshmi, to go, am I having a boy?
Yeah.
Like what?
Isn't it? You know, people would buy houses and they'd come and wave the blooming legal papers at me. Are we going to buy this house? Is this house going to be lucky for us? Just say yes or no. And, you know, that level of responsibility and pressure you put on a child. Dream of it now, would you? Well, I don't know. I think in certain parts of India it still goes on. If they consider a child was born in a certain way, and, you know, they think this child is lucky, but it's a huge amount of responsibility and pressure to put on a child. And I really began to feel it as my awareness grew. I started to then question, you know, these people who were inviting me into their homes, some of these families were the very ones that rejected me because I was half African, and so acceptable because I am lucky. But what if I wasn't lucky? Would I still be welcome in their home? You have to question.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Questions started to come into my mind once I realized I was adopted and what was actually really going on. I mean, my own family didn't. I think, yes, there was even an element in my mum and dad's mind that I brought them luck.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it didn't last after that. Do you know what I mean? It didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't keep asking me, "Oh, Bharti, should we do this?" They didn't consult me on everything. They just accepted that maybe I was a reward because they'd taken me in. Maybe I'd brought them luck, but they just considered it as a one. I was never asked after that, oh, can you tell us if this house is lucky, or can you tell us if we should go on this journey, or, you know, should we consider this marriage, or, you know, there was none of that from my immediate family after that.
But luck changed, didn't it, Bharti? You ended up with a skin condition, which I can't pronounce, so I'm going to let you mention what it is.
Yeah, so for sure it's called EB.
Okay.
And the slang term for it is butterfly skin, but the full term is epidermolysis bullosa, and types of it. And I think I came off pretty lucky. I had the simplex type, which is, it sounds awful, but there are different types, and I don't know the full, I've never researched it fully, but because in the 60s, there was very little known about it. All I know is that when I went to the consultant here in England, he said there were only they only knew of 3 or 4 people in the world who had it. That's how rare it was at that time. I think there's a bit more awareness now, but it's basically a condition where your skin just blisters up, and it's very, very delicate to the point where if I knocked myself against anything, I would get an instant blister or a tear.
Yeah.
So covered from top to toe with blisters. It looked like somebody just chucked a bucket of boiling water over me.
Yeah.
It's like you're burnt all over, you know?
Yeah, and I read that, you know, you went to see loads of gurus, physicians, consultants, and one even put you in some kind of a contraption that tried to burn your skin or something, and that you ended up going home and your legs were stuck to the leather seats in the car. Honestly, Bharti, I don't know how you dealt with this as a child, let alone how anybody as an adult would deal with this, you know?
Well,
how did you do it?
Rebelled. I think the final straw for me was the witch doctor, and I was like,
Can you just tell the story, please? That witch doctor, nutso.
I think that was the final straw for my dad as well. You know, like no, you better just shoot me now, because I am not going back to that man.
So for those guys who don't know what we're actually talking about right now, you need to read the book. But her dad takes her to a witch doctor in the middle of a forest. And this witch doctor says you need to drink this concoction and her skin will come back to or become better or whatever. And in this concoction, he has spat a huge glob of phlegm. And he's like, drink it, child. And you're like, oh my God. And you didn't. You ran away, didn't you?
I used to.
Oh my God.
I was like, there's no way. I don't care what this guy turns me into. In my imagination, I was thinking, you know, I used to be an avid reader like you, Urvashi. And I was like, I don't care what he turns me into, but there is no way I'm drinking.
Oh, can you? Oh God. Oh God. Honestly, I don't know where these doctors get away with it. But you were lucky, you know, I say you were lucky, but let's talk about before you got to the UK. And I know your father died before the Idi Amin rule or during the Idi Amin rule. Yes, he was having to hunt for them, wasn't he?
Yeah, Idi Amin came, I think, in 1970, and my dad died late 1971. And then Uganda in 72 when Idi Amin issued an edict that all Asians had to leave the country. And he gave us 90 days. But where we lived in Kabale, we heard 90 days initially, and then there was a rumor it's 45 days. So imagine the panic. But then it was actually 90 days. Yeah.
Oh, it was, yeah. And that journey, I mean, even you could write a whole book on just that part of your life, if I'm honest with you. You know, that would be an entire interesting book because obviously, like, loads of Asians had to migrate and become refugees, right?
Yeah.
As they decided which way they were going to go, back to India, to England, etc. But that story from how you got out of Kabale to the airport and the things that happened along the way, like, that is torturous for anyone, let alone a child.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, my mum was very, you know, like, I think what's come across for me, and I've written a chapter called A Mother's Courage, because it's about the power of women, isn't it?
Yes.
When women are confronted with certain harrowing situations, a woman gets this inner strength to protect. It's that lioness within her comes out. You know, like your podcast is Brown Girl Rising. That brown girl rising, that something rises within our mothers, I think, to do what they can to protect their children.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think if there's any testament, if I'd had any doubt whatsoever what I meant to my mum, it was dispelled on that journey. Because obviously first, when we left, the first every 50 miles there was a roadblock of soldiers, and when we got to the first roadblock, you know, really sadly, there was a car in front of us with a child who had a disability, and there was a wheelchair on top of the roof, and I think I've written about the fact that we actually saw that child get shot.
He chucked the wheelchair down the hillside and then he shot the child and thought he did a good job.
Yeah, and he forced the parents to say that he'd done a good job. And the phrase he used was, what use is he where he is going? So you know, there's certain phrases that stick in your mind. And this has always stuck in my mind because it was such a powerful, for a start, I was very much into English and it was very ungrammatical. So of course that
the scholar in you.
The fact that somebody would decide that you're worth, you know, somebody's already made a decision that you're not worthy to live. What use is he where you're going? And shot this poor little boy. And then it was our family's turn. And they went to the car and they found some sense in my brother's suitcase and were threatening to shoot him. So there was that terror because we'd already seen a child get shot. So we knew what these men were capable, these soldiers were capable. And then for him to point the gun at my mom and say, you know, you have to leave her behind because she's one of us. She's not one of you. And for my mom to say, I'm not leaving her behind, you know, that's strength. That's,
She had so much faith, your mum.
Yeah, and that sort of, if she was frightened, she didn't show it. She was just adamant, very respectfully adamant that she was not going to leave me behind. And I think in my book I've said that he repeated the order a few times and even cocked the trigger, and he pointed it at my mum's chest, and I was convinced we were all going to die. I was convinced. And then same phrase, he said, "What use is she where you're going?" And I thought, this is it. He's going to kill me now and throw me down the hillside. And then he just put the gun down and gave almost a grudging respect to my mum. And Urvashi, I sometimes think, was that a test to my mum? Was he testing my mum? Because Idi Amin had said that the Asians didn't like the Africans and the Asians hated the Africans.
Right.
They didn't marry the Africans, and they considered Africans lower than them and inferior to them. So maybe sometimes now I sometimes think, was he testing my mum? What would have been, was he expecting my mum to say, yeah, okay, I'll leave her behind? Because she's half African. I agree. She doesn't really belong to us. You can have her.
Oh, my God.
You do think in those scenarios, only after I think, but my mum was very assured and said, no, I'm not leaving her behind. She is my daughter. She's just as precious to me as all my other children, and I'm not leaving her behind.
Yeah, your mum sounds like an absolute saint. And to be given that, like, I guess, instruction from the soldier to leave you behind and go, no, she's my child. Like, that obviously gave you a big sense of worth in that moment, right? Like, you meant something to someone.
Yes, yeah. And then, of course, later on in the chapter, written about my Babiji, who was my cousin's wife, and how, we had to be in this room and the lights had to be off. My mum had gone to get her passport and papers with my cousin brother. Yeah. And we were given instructions to get into the water tank if the soldiers came to the house.
And they did.
And again, another woman prepared to die not just for her own children, but also her nieces and nephews. Yeah. She was prepared to die for all of us, and said, you have to get into that water tank, and you do not dare make any noise, and only when I knock on that water tank will you come out. Of course, I thought that was very exciting.
Yeah, when the soldiers come knocking at your door. Oh my God. So did you ever at any point feel different in terms of, obviously, maybe, I don't know, because you're half African, half Indian, maybe your skin was a little bit darker, your hair is curlier than maybe most Indians. Like, did you ever, did anyone ever make you feel like you didn't belong where you were?
Urvashi, one of the reasons I wrote Worth was because I wanted to highlight various aspects of the Indian community and to talk about the fact that, there was this prejudice about illegitimacy.
Yep.
Yeah, there were remarks made about my legitimacy, and people, as you get older, you become more aware of those remarks about people saying to my mom, she's got ganda khoon, dirty blood, or going to bring dishonor on your family, just like her birth mother did, So the most people were convinced that I was going to have a child illegitimately.
Yes, I remember reading that. Yeah.
Then there was this issue about, the sexism. If you want to adopt, why don't you adopt a boy? Why are you adopting a girl?
Yeah.
Then there is the messages about racism. Oh my God, she's an African, you're actually bringing an African into the family. And there were relatives that said to my mum and dad, my dad, people are going to think you had an affair with an African woman. So when I used to go to the Gurdwara when I was a teenager, I used to hear women saying that. Oh. And they realized I could understand Punjabi perfectly. And they would be saying in Punjabi to each other, oh, her dad must have had an affair. The poor woman, she's had to bring up this child. Or they would say things like, maybe she's had an affair, and snigger.
If only they knew.
They would say things like, oh, you brought your servant over from Uganda.
Oh my God.
Calling her your daughter, God's going to really bless you because, you brought this servant over and you're giving her this lovely life. And my mum would say, she's my daughter. And they'd say, you're calling her a daughter? Wow. Wow. Guruji is really going to bless you, And that sort of prejudice about being African was there. And then also the colorism.
Yep.
I was much darker. I had a broader nose. I've got a wig on, but, natural hair is very curly, shorter. And, people saying, she's a Kali, who's going to marry her? Nobody, you're not going to find anybody to marry her. She's going to be a burden to you for the rest of your life because you're going to marry her. So these are the things that chip away at a child's sense of worth and a young person's sense of worth.
Yeah.
And I've written somewhere in my book that I spent so many years comparing myself to Western and Eastern idea of beauty and finding myself lacking. I actually lost myself. I lost that sense of who I was because I wanted to be so much like an Asian. I wanted to have long, dark, straight hair. I wanted to have lighter skin. I wanted to look pretty. I wanted to be considered pretty. And I knew I wasn't considered pretty in Western ideology, and I wasn't considered pretty in Eastern ideology. So I think I wrote the book Worth because I wanted to bring those messages and highlight those messages that our community doesn't think about when they're talking in general terms, and they don't think about the impact it has on a child. I'm not talking about children of dual heritage. I'm talking about children, girls and boys who are brought up to think that their color is not their curly hair.
Absolutely. That there's a generation that has been brought up thinking they're not good enough, having limiting beliefs that are their parents' limiting beliefs. And, people like you, myself, are here to break that cycle, break that, that cycle in our own heritage. Because I know that you now have a daughter. You also now do work with children as well, don't you? So can we talk about what you're up to today?
So today I work in child protection.
Okay.
And I'm in child protection for over 30 years. Maybe there was a bit of a karmic destiny there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having said that, like I've said, I've talked very much about destiny in the path. I originally wanted to be a typical Indian profession lawyer. It didn't work out. And then I ended up I wanted to be a teacher. Then I wanted to be a journalist. And then I ended up just going into the social work route, something that I'd not even considered. But through the social work route, I have been able to adopt my own child.
I know.
So I feel like if I'd gone into any other route, maybe I would have missed my destiny of becoming a mother. I always wanted to be more of a mother than I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to be a mother more than anything. I just knew I couldn't do it down the legitimacy route because obviously my parents would have been mortified. But when this country has given me so much, and one of the things it gave me was that opportunity to adopt as a single mother, as a single woman, and I've done it, and I've got my child, and I'm extremely happy. I feel like a circle.
I love it. So you adopted a child. What's her heritage?
She is also dual heritage like me. Yes,
wow. Yeah. That's beautiful.
I've had people come up to me and say, oh, she's really light, she's really pretty. I've shut them down immediately. And my daughter considers herself just the same as me to be black. I am culturally, I am Indian. I cook Indian food, I speak Punjabi, I do everything Indian. I would say racially, I am dual heritage. So it makes me African and Asian, and that makes me black politically. So that's how my daughter is brought up. She's brought up as black politically, and she's very proud of who she is.
Yeah. But Asian culturally.
Yes, but Asian culturally, yes.
I love that. And you have a really good relationship with your daughter, right?
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
And she also knows she's adopted?
She's a teenager already.
Oh, she's a oh, okay. So you can, whatever you think is a good relationship with a teenager, right? Like she could go off the rails one minute and be sweet as pie the next, right?
I'm probably the most annoying mother in her life at the moment. You know,
bless.
when you have a teen, you can't do right for wrong.
Exactly.
Joking. She's lovely. I love her very much.
Amazing. So Bharti, look, I absolutely loved your book. We are going to wrap this up, but I loved your book. Now, if there's one tip you can give to our listeners on Brown Girl Rising to help them raise their sense of self-worth today, what would it be?
I would say, look in that mirror, and whatever negative message has been given to you, say to that mirror, if I've been called this or I've been told I'm this, that doesn't apply to me. And try and think of the opposite. So if somebody's called you, say, ugly. Look in that mirror and say, I'm beautiful. I am beautiful through and through. If somebody says to you, you're useless, hey, I'm beautiful. I have a purpose, and I have the right to be on this earth and to fulfill purpose. And keep repeating that over and over again. So whatever negative messages have been given to you, turn it round and repeat that opposite message over and over again. It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. Eventually, it will go through, and you will start feeling worthy, and you will build up your sense of self-worth. That's my
God. I love it. And if you want to know more about the affirmations that Bharti has, you will find them in page 247 of her book. She's got some beautiful affirmations. For example, I believe I'm worth it every moment, every second, all day and all night. When I show compassion to others, both my worth and my confidence grow. And other affirmations that you guys can also use to help you grow your self-worth. And Bharti, how do people find your book? How do people get hold of you and follow you? Give your socials.
So my book is on Amazon. It's also in Waterstones. And if you're outside the country, it's in Barnes and Noble. It's in most bookstores. If you haven't got it, then you can quote ISBN 978/1 78817/485/5. You're not going to remember it anyway.
I'll put a link to the Amazon book in the podcast notes. What was that? Yes, what's your website, my love?
www.bhartidhir.com.
Okay.
Instagram just as Bharti Dhir, and also on Facebook as and LinkedIn. So you get all those details all there. I don't know why I read out the ISBN. That was a dark. It was.
It was quite funny, I'll be honest with you. Listen, guys, so I will put the link to the book on Amazon in the show notes. I'll also put the link to find Bharti on all the social medias. But this book is incredible. It is called Worth, and it is an inspiring true story of abandonment, exile, inner strength, and belonging. And you guys have to read this. So thank you, Bharti, for your time today. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you for inviting me. And I've just really enjoyed talking to you. I can't believe the hour's over.
I know, it's gone really quick, hasn't it? And you know what? It's such a pleasure to have actually met you in person. And when you were talking to me that day, I was just like, I need this book. I need this book. You know, I read the back cover and I was like, I have to read this book. So guys, if you're anything like me and you are an avid book reader, or even if you're not, you will get absolutely sucked into this world of Bharti's from day birth to today. It is absolutely a stunning story. And you can see that she has got so much self-worth, and you deserve to be on this planet. I absolutely love you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.